Hi, my name is Jeanette and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today I'm going to talk about all the books I read in October, very briefly. I did read a couple series in October, but I'm going to include my review for one of the series in this video, and then I'm going to do a separate series review video for the other series. And when I get to that series, I will tell you why I'm doing a separate video. Okay, so in October, I spun my wheel and ended up with 6 books on my list as per usual. So I will link my October TBR wheel spin video down below so that you can kind of see it. So the first spin that came up was a Goodreads random pick. So I went to my Goodreads and I randomized my want to read own list, and the top book that came up was The Hurt and the Healer by Andrew Farley and Bart Millard. So I have this book on my Kindle. I'm really thinking about buying it in physical because this is a book that I definitely want to reread. So basically, this was the random pick, and this is where it was like the perfect time, not perfect time for me to read it. Yeah. This is where, how do I explain this? Basically, I don't know what I was really expecting when I went into this book, but when I first started it, I was surprised to discover that it read more like a devotional, with each chapter ending with questions to consider and a prayer. So after reading the first chapter, I decided, okay, I'm going to read this as a devotional and do a chapter a day. There are only 16 chapters in this book. So I should have read it I started it October 1st, so I should have had it done the 16th of October, 17th, 18th, like I should have had it done within just over 2 weeks. Nope, I finished it October 30th. Basically, there are some really good perspectives provided that really gave me a lot to think about. There were some spots that really challenged my thoughts and feelings due to personal stuff that was going on in my life in the month of October. And so it really hit home hard and made me really think or kind of want to avoid, because I wasn't ready to deal with that subject matter at that time. Because of this, I took multiple days in between reading because I would know what the next chapter was going to be talking about. And one of those that I had to take a pause on was talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness is a choice you make and not just all about your feelings. And I mean, I know that's something that everybody struggles with. When they've been hurt, forgiving someone is very hard. And that's kind of where I was or where I am at this point in time. I'm not, I'm not completely over it and I've completely forgiven because I still have stuff to work through, as I know probably everyone does. So it was just like knowing that, I'm like, I am not ready to deal with this today or tomorrow. So I put it off for a little while, but then it was like, okay, I need to get through this book. And God has given me this book at this time for a reason. I totally knew that and could see that, but was I ready to accept that? So I gave this book 4 stars because I highlighted so much in this book. So much stood out to me and made me really think. And I do plan on rereading this again at some point when I'm at a different place in my life, because I know I will get even more out of it than what I did this time. So I'm just going to share a couple quotes that I did highlight. One is, we all meet difficulty in this life, no matter who we are. The key is how we respond to it. And then our second one, our sense of identity and worth needs to come from what God says about us, not from what we have accomplished or not accomplished, and not from what others say about us, whether good or bad. Yeah. So, I mean, both of those really hit home, and there are so many other quotes that I highlighted that, yes, I recommend reading this book. So then, my second wheel spin was a BFF pick. So I allowed my BFF to pick the book that I was going to read. I had told her to pick a book that I own, that's on my want to read list. However, she doesn't really listen to instructions very well, but I will forgive her because she gifted me this book, Until Leaves Fall in Paris by Sarah Sundin. Now, she had read this book when not based on my recommendation, but I told her that I'd heard really good things about it, so she had read it earlier in the year and then gifted it to me to read. I was expecting to really enjoy this book based on what I'd heard people talk about and based on the fact that I had just read 3 other Sarah Sundin books. What month are we in? October? In September. And I loved them. So I kind of expected to love this book, and it did not disappoint. I loved this book. So I just need to find my notes. So the story is set in Paris, 1940, at the time when the Germans are beginning to move into France. Lucy and Paul are 2 Americans who made Paris their home, but with tensions rising between the Germans and the French, they are living during unsettling times. Paul runs an automotive factory and has been convinced by the U.S. Army to stay to obtain information for the U.S. Lucy is a ballerina by trade, but buys a bookstore to allow Jewish owners to escape. Paul and Lucy meet when Paul brings his 5-year-old daughter Josie to the bookstore. There is an instant connection between them, but due to circumstances they can't or they won't explore it. After a while, they begin to grow closer, but a relationship between them would not be safe for either of them. Then, America and Germany declare war, and staying in Paris is dangerous. Can they escape to safety, or can they explore a relationship? Once war is declared, I was on the edge of my seat, needing to know what was going to happen, and if Paul and Josie and Lucy would be safe. There were quite a few terrifying moments, and one that just had me in tears. I really loved the interactions between Lucy, Paul, and Josie. Josie has a vivid imagination, and I loved how Lucy was able to bring her stories to life. The courage that both Paul and Lucy show was incredible. I couldn't imagine living in the circumstances surrounding them. The details of the story were in-depth and made me feel like I was right there with them. I learned so much about this time in history that I never knew, never really thought much about. I highly recommend this book. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it, and I'm so excited to put it on my shelves. So the quote that I took from this one is, I'll explain this simple truth. If I were to ban sinners from this church, the pews would be empty. So would the pulpit. I love that because everyone is a sinner. And you can't judge somebody based on one action or kind of, well, you sin, so you are ostracized from us. But yet, you sin too. So do you have to leave too? I really, really enjoyed this book. If you haven't read it, pick it up and read it. So then, my third wheel spin was released at least 10 years ago. So I picked up Nothing But Trouble by Susan May Warren. This book was released in 2009. That is more than 10 years ago. So this is book one of her PJ Sugar series. Then my fourth spin was a reread. So I decided to pick up book number 2, Double Trouble, of this series. And then my fifth spin was a contemporary romance. So I decided to pick up License for Trouble, which is book 3. So this is the other series that I read. Now, after I finished them and kind of looked up a little bit more, it's not really a contemporary romance genre. It's more of a mystery suspense with a little bit of, I want to say romantic suspense, but more mystery than suspense, personally. The back just says fiction general. So, yeah. So these are the next 3 I read. So PJ left town 10 years ago. She grew up in Kellogg, Minnesota. And after an incident happened at her high school prom, she left town right after graduation and hasn't been back since. When her sister Connie calls and asks her to come home for her wedding and stay to look after her 4-year-old son while she's away on her honeymoon, as their mom can't due to an ankle injury, PJ agrees. This will be the first time in 10 years that she has returned home. She has mixed feelings about returning home because of the incident that prompted her to leave town. Of course, one of the first people she runs into upon her return is her old high school boyfriend. He is not quite the wild guy that he once was, and now is a detective on the police force. He tells PJ he has been waiting for her to return and wants to establish their relationship. However, PJ is not the same person she was 10 years ago. She has recently become a Christian. When her best friend's husband gets arrested for murder, PJ is sure that he is innocent and sets out to prove it. This is where the mystery aspect of the book comes in. I didn't really care for the mystery part of the story, but I did enjoy watching PJ trying to figure out what truly happened. I did not like her high school boyfriend. It seemed he only saw her as who she was in high school and wanted her to be that same person now. He didn't even try to get to know the PJ, who she was now. There were a few parts of the story that felt far-fetched and unbelievable. Her sister goes away and leaves her 4-year-old son in the care of an aunt who he's never met. Really? And it's his first day of school as well? That just felt off. I didn't feel like a mother would do that. This book did truly have me laughing at some of the antics that PJ got into with her 4-year-old nephew, David, and the Russian in-laws. But the story just didn't hook me. However, so that was book 1. So it kind of introduces us to PJ Sugar, her ex-boyfriend, or her, they're not together, right? So her ex-boyfriend from high school, her sister, her niece, why do I say niece? Her nephew, and her mom. And then we've got the best friend and the husband who is being arrested, and really what really happened. So that is book 1. So then I moved on to book 2. Book 2 picks up right after book 1, which is Double Trouble. PJ is now working with Jeremy, who is a private investigator, and she is training to become a private investigator and ends up being the stand-in for someone who is in the witness protection program as they get ready to testify for the trial. I didn't really understand why PJ was put in such a dangerous position, but this circumstance introduced us to some wonderful characters and added elements of danger and amusement to the story. I fell in love with PJ's new neighbor, Gabby. For being an 80-year-old woman, she was a wonderful watchdog for PJ. The mystery kept me trying to figure out who the bad guy was and questioning if we had even met them yet. On the character relationship side, there is a love triangle happening, and PJ needs to decide if she is going to go with the comfortable and familiar relationship of her high school boyfriend, or does she have feelings that she wants to explore for the new guy in her life. I am not a fan of love triangles, and I wasn't a fan of one of the guys, so the fact that it took PJ quite a while to decide really annoyed me. Thankfully, she went with the guy that I liked. PJ is a relatable character as she tries hard to do the right thing but stumbles at times. She is not perfect and makes mistakes. This book falls into the cozy mystery category for me, as there was a little bit of romance and a little bit of suspense with quirky characters throughout. So then I moved on to book number 3, which is Licensed for Trouble. So PJ has now inherited a house that needs a lot of work. So her sister recommends a handyman to her. Max, the handyman, has amnesia and has spent the last 3 years trying to build a new life, but wondering who he really is. PJ and Max agree to trade services. He will work on making the repairs needed to the house, and PJ will try to figure out who he is. PJ has no idea why she inherited this house from someone she barely knew. So she begins digging into the inheritance to figure out why. Meanwhile, she is also trying to figure out where Max came from and who he really is. This leads her on a dangerous mission, and her life is threatened multiple times. I really enjoyed reading the diary entries. PJ continues to struggle with seeing herself how others see her. She still sees herself as her high school nickname describes her, Trouble. I felt PJ's relationship with her sister is stronger in this book, and Connie was able to speak frankly with her and get PJ to recognize that she has grown since her high school days and she is not who she used to be. Eventually, PJ starts to accept what her sister is saying, and begins to see herself as more than just trouble. This was my favorite of the series, as I found myself more engaged in figuring out the 2 mysteries. I was glad that the love triangle was over, and appreciated that PJ ended up with the character that I liked. I did feel like the storyline with the mom was thrown in after the fact, and didn't really add to the story. Overall, I would categorize this series as a cozy mystery. And I could see these books into like a Hallmark movie series. So overall, I gave all 3 books 3 stars. Because while I kind of enjoyed it, I didn't really get into it. I really cared that much. Other than the love triangle, and I didn't want her with one of the guys. So this is one series that I've had on my shelves over 10 years probably, probably shortly after it originally came out. And I don't know at this point in time if I'm going to keep it or not, and which is the whole point that it was on my reread list for this year. So we'll see. So the 6th book that I spun for was Mystery Suspense. So I had picked Point of Danger by Irene Hannon. This is a romantic suspense, and so I picked it for Mystery Suspense because it's got the suspense in it. So this is book 1 of her Triple Threat series. This is the series that I am going to do a full series review on, because I did read book 1, book 2, Labyrinth of Lies, and book 3, which is Body of Evidence, which I had an advanced reader copy of, so it's on my Kindle. So I'm going to do a full series review on this, but I will tell you, I really enjoyed this series, and Irene Hannon did not disappoint me. So the last book I read this month was The Secrets of Emberwild by Stephenia H. McGee. I received this as an advanced reader copy from Revel. It is a historical romance, and it was released on the October the 4th. Nora has grown up on a horse farm and wants to be a horse trainer. But it is 1905, and her family tells her that a woman's place is to get married and manage the house. When her father dies, she believes she will inherit the farm and can continue training her horse, Errol. However, her uncle has different plans and motives. Silas arrives at the farm looking for answers about what happened to his father and his horse 15 years ago. He gets hired as a horse trainer for Nora's horse. Errol only seems to listen to Nora, so Silas asks her to show him how she has been training Errol so far. The two begin to form a bond, and Silas explains his reasons for being at the farm. Nora has suspicions about what happened to the horse Silas is searching for, but if her suspicions are right, it could have a negative impact on Emberwild, her home. Nora is torn between what to do. There are quite a few details provided about the time and activities spent with the horse Errol. Even though I love horses, they did not keep me invested in the story. I found the story move slow with not much happening for a good portion of the book. It did pick up near the end, but by then I was ready to be done. I struggled with Nora. I could understand her frustration at not being able to do what her heart really wanted, and the way her uncle treated her annoyed me. But I also felt that she was very passive around others and didn't stand up for herself. Once again, it was the guy character Silas that I connected with the most. He is an honest man trying to get answers about his father's death and what happened to his father's horse. I liked that he could see that Nora contributed to the horse training. He gets blamed for something he didn't do and leaves for a while. While I didn't like the idea of Nora being paired with a guy 17 years older than herself, I was glad when she finally stood up for herself. I was not a huge fan of the romance that did happen. I would have liked more time with them, getting to know one another to believe the feelings that had developed. I was pleased with the way the story wrapped up and happy with how things worked out for each person. The quote that I took from this book was, "There were so many things she couldn't control, but she wouldn't let worry rob her of the contentment she found. She'd pray for peace and let God work out the details." I really enjoyed that. There were so many things that she couldn't control, so she prayed for peace and let God work out the details. So, well, I didn't get that invested with the characters and the stories, and even though I loved the horse, this was kind of I don't want to say blah, because it wasn't, because I mean, if it was blah, I would have put the book down and not finished it. Well, would I have? That's debatable because I have problems DNFing as well. So I gave this book 3 stars because it moved slow for me, and while there were parts I liked, there were parts that I didn't like, or I would have liked more of other parts. So overall, it's a debate between what book is my favorite of the month, because it's either this one or this one. So yeah, do historical romance, romantic suspense. Totally different types of stories. But I absolutely loved both of these. And I did a vlog where I was reading this book. So I will link that vlog below and you can check that out. And then I am going to do the series review of the full series of this, and that will be coming in the next few days. So I want to thank you for watching, and please leave a comment in the comments below about what your favorite book was of October, and I would love to check out that book. Thank you. Bye.